Hey, Kansas City business owners making $100,000 or more per year. This message is for you. You work hard, but let's be real. Your finances, they might be a challenge. You're spending hours drowning in receipts, guessing what to enter in QuickBooks, and stressing out over taxes. And here's the scary part. If your numbers are wrong, you could end up paying way more in taxes this year, or even worse, getting hit with fines from the IRS. But you don't have to keep doing this alone. Silverstone Bookkeeping has over 16 years of experience and has helped over 50 businesses clean up their books and avoid costly mistakes. They know how to fix the mess fast so you can focus on growing your business. Right now, Silverstone Bookkeeping is offering a free 15-minute review of your finances in QuickBooks, where they'll review your setup, identify issues, and help you keep more of your hard-earned money. That's a $150 value, free for the first 5 listeners of Kansas City Business Cast. You heard me right. Silverstone Bookkeeping, with their 16 years of bookkeeping experience, is providing a special offer to check your QuickBooks setup and ensure everything is in order for 2025. If your business is making $100,000 or more per year, do not wait. Call Silverstone Bookkeeping at area code 913-732-4151 or visit silverstonebookkeeping.com to book your free audit today. You grow your business. Let Silverstone Bookkeeping handle the tedious financial tasks. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Kansas City Business Cast, where we assemble a cast of entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and influencers in the Kansas City region. You just heard a message from our sponsor for season 4. Again, we so appreciate more people to kind of taking notice of this podcast. And if you are a business owner and you would like to sponsor some ad space on this show, just contact me. Let me know. I've got a pretty good understanding of our reach across all the platforms now and all the social media stuff. So really appreciate that support. I have my guest here today. This has been just a minute in the making, as far as we just went through this epic journey of technical difficulties to get this started. So Shelia Johnson from Gangsta Goodies Kitchen, welcome to Kansas City Business Cast. I'm so glad to have you here.
I am so glad to be here, Michael. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So I don't usually do this, but I think your bio just kind of screams your qualifications from the mountaintop. And so I wanted to kind of start this off by kind of telling our listeners about who you are, and we'll kind of go from there. I know we're going to talk about your origin story today, a lot of your professional experience and how that's led you up to the success of Gangsta Goodies Kitchen. So I'm just going to kind of read this real quick, and then we'll go from there. Okay?
Sounds good.
Awesome. All right. Sheila, a Kansas City native, is the passionate force behind Gangsta Goodies Kitchen, a culinary platform where love, food, and relationships intertwine. Armed with a rich educational background from the KC Mo Public School System and Rockhurst University, including a Bachelor's of Arts in Organizational Leadership, a master's in business administration, and a certification in nonprofit management leadership, Sheila's journey spans various roles across both nonprofit and profit sectors. Her diverse career path, including stints as a project manager, director of finance, events director, client relations manager, social service director, and sales professional, has uniquely equipped her for her current role as owner, executive producer, host of Gangsta Goodies Kitchen, and the creative engine of Charcuterie by Sheila. That is quite a resume, my friend.
Thank you.
Not to mention over 200 episodes of Gangsta Goodies Kitchen. And we were talking before we recorded how you do have some help in this effort, this movement, this endeavor that is Gangsta Goodies Kitchen, but it's mostly you, right? Outreach, production, planning, processes, keeping it going, PR, marketing, all of the things.
All of the things except editing. That's the one thing that I can't do. That's the one thing that I don't do. And it's not really that I want to do all of those things because I'm looking forward to the day when there's a full-fledged production team that handles all of that. And all I got to do is show up and cook and engage with my guests, and then everybody else do the rest of it.
Absolutely. That's a dream, right? Like,
That is my dream.
I'll tell you because I do all the editing right now, and I have had folks from like overseas and even across the United States. They just once you know this, right? Like, and I saw your YouTube channel. You've well eclipsed the 1,000 subscribers. You're almost at 2,000 on YouTube.
Almost.
Right. And so you know this when you put yourself on the map, people start hitting you up from everywhere. Hey, do you need an editor? Hey, your YouTube tags are out of line. I can help you with this. I can help you with your SEO. And you're like, I need to have the capital to pay all
Right.
this. I can tell you from
Right.
personal experience, you do not want to do the editing. The fact that you have help, I'm like, who does your editing?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
that's a big
Yes.
deal. That's a
It
huge,
is a big
huge
deal.
time.
And I mean, it really, really is. And I
Yeah.
mean, that is where, I send the raw footage and, he pulls it together and make it make sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a pure art skill that I don't have.
Absolutely. So, with me reading off a part of your bio, can you tell us a little bit about your origin? It's like, I think people in the Kansas City region are raving fans of you. You are just, you're one of those people too. Like, you just seem to be gifted with networking and connecting with others. In the roles that you've held, your education, all that background, I would love to hear. And I know our listeners would about the path you took to kind of get to
Sure.
where you're at today.
Sure, absolutely. So I think a big factor in my who I am, my whole path is Michael. I was a teenage mom. Okay. And so a lot of people don't know that about me. But in situations like this, I like to share that. And I like to share that because oftentimes in our society, when we make those types of not the best decisions at such a young age, our society throws us away. They're like, oh, that girl will never amount to anything, And so, but yet I had such a support system, my mom, even the father of my daughter, who's 40 years old now, her dad, his mom, my mother, my aunt, my teachers, and because imagine, that wasn't something that was very common when I was in high school. And so having that kind of support was critical. But it also delayed some things. My education, my formal higher education was one of them. So I didn't go back to school until I was an adult. I was going through a divorce and raising two girls on my own. And I thought, wait a minute. I need to be able to make some money. I could hear my grandmother saying, "You're pretty. You're real pretty. But what you got up here and what you got in here is what sets you apart." And so that is when I decided to go back to school and pursue my education. Spoke loudly to me for a couple of reasons. One, my mother was a single mom. My mother was also an LPN. But at some point, she decided to go to cosmetology school. She went to Hevelin, which is still today on like 57th, 58th and Troost. And we lived in north side of town. And so we would drive down Troost. And as a kid, I'm looking at Rockhurst. I'm like, what is that?
Mm.
What are those people like over there? What are they learning over there? So Rockhurst was always something, a mystery to me, And so then as I started looking into what school I was going to go to, Rockhurst was just at the top of the list. And because it was small, and I felt like as a full-time person working full-time, a full-time mom, I needed a smaller, more nurturing type of environment. And Rockhurst, when I tell you, did not disappoint. When I tell you it was worth every penny of it, it was worth every penny of it. You did not leave Rockhurst without a strong sense of responsibility for community.
Mm.
At the end of every class, there is a project, a community project. How are you going to take what you learned in this class and better your community, add value to your community? And so I will say that my sense of, even with Gangsta Goodies Kitchen, it was, what can I do? How can I take my education, my lived experiences, and have a positive impact on the community? And so, and a lot of that comes from my time at Rockhurst, and you can tell I loved it because I got my undergrad, my graduate, and my nonprofit certification
Oh,
all at
sweet.
Rockhurst.
Yeah,
All at Rockhurst. So, and
absolutely.
so that having that education, and actually, Michael, after I was going to get my bachelor's degree, and I had a professor pull me aside and he asked me, he said, "Have you enrolled for graduate school?" I'm like, "Oh, no, 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 no. I'm done. I'm done. I'm going to take this and run. I'm done." And he said, "Well, hear me out." And he said, "I've heard what you said in class, that your leadership role in your home is what's primary for you right now." And he said, "And because you are a single mom, you want to be able to leverage your income so that your education will be able to do this." He said, "Sheila, it would only take you about a year and a half." And he said, when I got my master's degree, he said my income increased by 30%. He said, "And I'm pretty confident." He said, "First of all, you're prettier than me." He said, "And you're smarter than me." He said, "I have no doubt that your income is going to increase more than you would even imagine." And I'm like, huh, a year and a half, let's do it. And so I did it. And he was right on the money. Before I even graduated, my income increased by 50%. And so it was, and for me, that was critical, being a single mom, in making sure that my girls could have access to what they needed access to, and resources and those sorts of things. But it also gave me the confidence, to say, you know what? This teenage mom from the neighborhood, she did this, and so it was a testament to my daughters, and it was always important to me that my daughters be proud of me,
Yeah.
That when they walked out into the community, they're like, oh, people would say, "Oh my God, you're Shelia Johnson's daughter, your mom, we love her, she's amazing," and so, and being that example, because I firmly believe that our role in the home plays the biggest. My mother was always my greatest influence. And so my goal was also to be their greatest influence. And so by that, showing them that, yep, we can start off rocky. We can. We can start off, and we have made some decisions that were not ideal, but you don't have to live in that. You can turn that around at any moment. It's all up to you. And, I remember my grandmother used to say to me, "You got to get it up here. And when you get up here, can't nobody take it from you."
Mm.
She said, "But if you don't do nothing with it, you can't blame nobody else. That's on you." And so those are, and all of those values that were embedded in me as a kid, those same values were wrapped around me at Rockhurst. And I tell you, I love Rockhurst. I love Rockhurst.
It's
And
so
so it
awesome.
really, and I knew that, and I tell people too, that the name, the reputation. And so when I would go and apply for a job, I may not have gotten all the opportunities that I went after, but you know what? Having that name on my resume, it commanded attention.
Mm.
And I at least got in there. And if I couldn't sell myself, that was on me, right? But it opened doors for me that may not have ever been open for me. And so I'm very grateful. I'll be forever grateful for the opportunity to have an education and the quality of education that I received. I'm truly blessed.
It's just amazing. I'm so curious too about the type of field you were in, because you said you were working full time, then you're
Mm-hmm.
going to school.
Mm-hmm.
Knocking out a master's program. It is only a year and
Mm-hmm.
a half, but it is not easy. It's not for the faint of
It's
heart.
not.
And I know my wife is a marriage and family therapist. She's gotten the master's. I remember we were kids when she started going through that, and I remember that was just no joke. So I'm curious, about, the type of industries you were in as well. You talked about,
Sure.
in your bio, project management, director of
Mhm.
finance,
Mhm.
events director, client relations
Mhm.
manager, and then
Yeah.
into social services and getting the certificate in nonprofit management. So, can you kind of tell us
Yeah.
about your
Yes.
career path? Because
Absolutely.
it's very
Yes.
interesting. I look at that and I go, there's not a thing she can't do or hasn't done
Right.
because I've got recruitment experience. I've hired for roles like that for organizations.
Yes.
So tell us about that. Like, where were you at when you got
Sure.
in? And yeah,
Absolutely. So I actually started my career at Missouri Gas Energy. It was called Missouri Gas Energy at that time.
okay,
And so it's now called Spire. It's the local natural gas distributor. Okay.
gotcha.
And so now when I started there, I started in customer service. Okay. And after 8 months, I'm like, oh no, there's got to be something else I can do. This ain't it. However, what I learned in customer service definitely took me to the other positions. So after about 8 months, there was a position that opened in the sales department, and it was small business sales coordinator. And I got the job. And so did that for a while. And basically in that role, I was a support role for a couple of the larger natural gas customers. Okay. And so whatever the sales rep needed, maybe a contract needed to be drawn up, whatever that sales support was. Okay. And I did that for probably about 2 years, maybe. And then there was some reorganization that happened in the organization. And they're like, hey, we're going to send you down to one of the field offices and you're going to be a project manager. And I'm like, okay.
That's not sales. That's operations.
That's operations. And
Ooh.
so with that, one of the first things I learned was AutoCAD.
Whoa. I know
Yes.
what that is.
Yes. And so literally, looking at the plans and I didn't figure out which route it needed to go, but how much pressure needed to be on there, on the line, on the meter, and most importantly, the economic evaluation of it.
Mm,
How long was it going to take Missouri Gas Energy to recoup their money from installing that pipe?
right.
Okay. And so here's kind of where my education and the career, kind of really melded together. So we had a project in class where we had to look at a process within our organization and we had to, make it more efficient, whether that was saving money or make it more efficient.
Yeah.
And
Eliminating
so
waste. Yeah.
exactly. And so at that time, Missouri Gas Energy was charging for commercial and residential new pipe $7 a foot. Now, the regulations dictated that that was what it could only be without going back and applying for a rate increase for residential. But it had no stipulations for commercial. So we just went with that $7 a foot, even though it cost us more than $7 a foot to lay commercial pipe. We was still only charging $7 a
So
foot.
you're going into the red for everything commercial. Negative.
Exactly.
No profit.
Exactly.
Not good.
So I'm like, nah. So that was the process that I looked at. So I had to meet with the attorneys at the gas company, the regulators and all that to make sure that I was understanding. I said, so wait a minute. We literally can charge more, but we don't. And so I just started with even let's charging whatever it cost us to put it in the ground, let's charge that to the customer. And then eventually we can ramp it up and then we can add, so there's profit from the very beginning,
Hmm.
instead of the break even point. And so, and I don't know what they do to this day, but after that, and I presented it to our senior staff, yada, yada, yada. And so they implemented that with commercial customers. We started charging them. If it cost us $30 a foot, then that's what that commercial customer was going to be paying, $30 a foot. And so that was really, it was a big thing for us, because again, nobody had ever questioned it. That's what we did because that's what the tariffs said when it came to residential. And so we just said $7 across a foot, no matter what. But that changed. And so that was kind of, and then with, that in that role, I did like every other week, we had like a blitz. So whatever projects were coming down, it was engineering, because I was then a part of the engineering department, even though I did the engineering side and the sales side. That's how they came up with she's a project manager now.
Absolutely.
And
That is
so,
common too in industrial settings and in construction companies. Like, it is the project manager is a big, big deal. Like that role.
yes.
When they don't know who
And
to go to, they go to the project manager too.
exactly,
Yeah.
and Michael, I had an amazing boss. He was like, whatever you want to learn, just let me know. And he just was extremely supportive. I could not have asked for a better person to lead me in that part.
Absolutely.
And anything that a department needed, he's like, hey, Sheila, operations is looking for this, or construction is looking for this. Is that something you want to delve into? And so I'm like, yeah, let me learn that too. Michael, I really would be I would be a student today if somebody would just pay me to go to school.
Just a little side note too, because I know a learner when I see one and when I hear one. And I've taken all the personality assessments. And one of the things that always comes up is, inquisitive nature, being a learner. Literally, the tagline for my business, I'm looking at it right now, it's learn more, no less. I think being a student and the attitude and the humble disposition of remaining
Yes.
a student in all things,
Yes. In all things.
that's
Yes.
where you start to get real wisdom
Yes.
and the love for learning. So I did want to
Yes.
just take a moment to honor that, because I
Yes.
see that and I hear you talking about that, and the fact I can visualize it too, as your boss is saying, hey, here's another problem, do you want to help us solve
Yeah.
it? Oh, hey, what
Yeah.
about this? And your willingness and eager attitude to just dive in,
Yes.
like, that's the
Absolutely.
accelerator, right?
Yes, yes. And even now, I work for a small family-owned property management company,
Hey,
and I'm my company's social services director. And we manage affordable housing for senior citizens. And so I'm their social side of their stay. So anything they need, any challenge that they are facing, I'm there to help navigate them through that. And we had a little while ago, we had one of the property managers who was having a family crisis. And so, my boss, who's also the owner, was like, hey, would you mind doing XYZ? I'm like, not a problem. I'll be there. What time you want me to be there? Yes. So
it's
I'll put
amazing.
on my hat as the property manager and do that too, because, we're a team, and if there is something that's falling down, it may not impact me immediately, but eventually it's going to impact me, and then it's going to impact the people that we serve. And that's definitely not something that I'm willing to let stuff fall through the cracks when there's something that I can do to help make it happen. So, and I love
Absolutely.
it. And the seniors, oh my God, Michael, when I tell you, and I want to tell you, it never fails. My mother transitioned back in 2013, and it has been the most difficult thing I've ever experienced in my life. And my residents just, was it Wednesday?
When you mean transition, do you mean she
Passed away.
okay. Okay, I
Yes,
got you.
yes, she passed away. And so I have Miss Helen at one of my properties. Miss Helen's like 92 years old. She comes in my office and she says, honey, you was really on my mind this weekend. And I was out with my daughter and I bought you something. And I said, Miss Helen, you should not be spending your money on me. And she says, I know, but you always wear these cute earrings. And when I saw those
You
earrings, she
do.
said, I was like, oh my gosh,
Your earrings are always on point, Sheila. You know this.
thank you. And she just, and she gave me the biggest hug. And it was exactly what I needed at that moment, because I was missing my mom. We had just come out of the holidays. And I was like, Miss Helen, you have no idea. And she said, honey, I know. And it is such a fulfilling role as well. It really is.
Absolutely. So, yeah, you were talking about, being in the gas industry. Where did your heart sort of start to turn to, I'd love to go for the nonprofit management. Did you do that right after your MBA, or like what's that sort of conversion, not necessarily a conversion story, but we talk
Yeah.
about your origin, but where's the point where you're like
Right.
nonprofits at where it's at, or
Right. It
community?
was. And actually, what happened, Michael, I had a first cousin who we lost to her second battle of breast cancer. And it just really kind of shifted a lot of things, for me personally. And that is when I got involved with Susan G. Komen, had a local office here. And I took, I don't know, maybe a month or 6 weeks. And really, they needed help with increasing the diversity in their biggest fundraiser, which was their annual race. And so their annual Susan G. Komen race
Yep.
for the cure.
That's the
And
big one
so that's the big
everywhere.
one. Yes, it is. And so at that time, the executive director was a lovely lady named Lori Maris. And so she and I worked really close together, and we just did a lot of, and it was just low hanging fruit things. It was things even like the race marketing
Yep.
materials. What does it look like?
Who's being represented? Yeah.
Who's being represented?
Yep.
And because there was a lot of connections with grocery stores, because who's in grocery stores? Women are. But what grocery stores are you taking the information to? I mean, really low hanging fruit stuff. But when we're in it and we're working in it, we don't see those
That's
things, because they're
correct.
right under our nose.
Yep.
And so that is really what kind of shifted that. And from there, I went and started working for the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance, which is the certifying body of the nonprofit leadership management certification.
Okay. And they do
And
that through
Rockhurst,
Rockhurst?
they do that here locally. I think
Okay.
you can go to Rockhurst and William Jewell as
Oh,
well.
sweet. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was the workforce development person. So my role was to connect the students with the nonprofit organizations, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, all of that. And so that's, kind of how I moved from profit to nonprofit.
Some incredible. And
Yes.
so you definitely have had a strong sense of community. Just, I can tell networking is effortless for you. It's just like breathing.
It
um,
is. I love people. I
you
do.
know,
And I just want to know, what are they doing, and how are they doing it, and because I really believe that we're in there together. So it's like, how can I help you? How can we be of benefit and of value to one another? And so I love connecting with people. I remember after I got my master's degree, one of my mentors asked me, he said, "Okay, Sheila, what's next? What are you going to do next? What's ideal?" And I was like, "Oh, that's easy." I said, "If I can invite people into my space and feed them first, and then connect them with information and resources that they could use to elevate the qualities of their own lives and make lots and lots of money doing it," I said, "that's what I would do." And so Gangsta Goodies Kitchen is that,
yeah,
and so the guest comes in, the guest is bringing information and resources back to the viewing family, that they can then use, whether it's a mentoring program, or we had our new Jackson County prosecutor was a guest on the show. And, it's like, come on, sis, let's tell people what your vision is, why should they vote for you, and what's your plan, and so being able to have those kinds of conversations and connect with people over food and bringing back value and information to the community it's priceless. I love it.
yeah.
Now, I'm not to the lot of money yet, but it's coming.
Absolutely. So yeah, great segue into Gangsta Goodies Kitchen. Before we talk more about, the why, what's going on, maybe some moments that you're especially proud of, maybe some challenges, I definitely want to go down that rabbit hole too. Just for the listeners' orientation, how long have you
Yes.
been at Gangsta Goodies? When did you start it?
Wow. We dropped our very first video on December the 2016.
So you're going to hit 10 years next year,
Mm-hmm.
and you're
Yes.
at over 200 episodes. You're currently in
Yes.
season 8. Um,
Yes.
has it always been Gangsta Goodies Kitchen, the name? And I'm curious about the genesis of how you got the name as well.
Yes, it has always been. Now, I understand that when this platform goes much bigger, the name may change, and I'm okay with that. It might. It just depends on who picks it up. They may want to change the name. I would hope that they wouldn't, but so that same mentor said to me when I started Gangster Goodies, he said, Sheila, he said, I'm gonna need you to change the name. And I'm like, why? And he said, because you're not a gangster. And I said, I'm not a gangster, ER. I said, but I am a gangsta. And so he's like, okay, help me understand. Because he really believed that because I'm not, he's like, you're intelligent, you're this and you're
Mm,
that. People are gonna think you're poking fun of the culture.
okay.
And I said, dude, I'm a gangster whenever you get through, okay? I said, look, I said, first of all, I was a teen mom, okay? Grew up in the hood, okay? I said, and then, as time moves on, I said, that in itself is a story. I said, and then by the time I was 30, I was raising two girls by myself and working full time, went back to school, PTA president at one daughter's school, dance coach at the other daughter's school. I said, and when I went back to school, I wasn't playing. I graduated magna cum laude. I
Yeah.
said, dude, that's a gangster whenever you get through.
That is the flex of all flexes. You just listed a series of flexes.
Yes.
Dropped like a true
I'm like, that's a
gangsta, by the
gangster.
way. Absolutely.
And then on top of that, I said the market that we're targeting are women between the ages of 25 and 45. Because the other goal with the recipe is that, and I keep the recipes simple, okay, is to encourage families to get back in the kitchen together, y'all. The kitchen, when I think about, and I didn't realize it until, of course, I'm an adult, but being in the kitchen with my mother and my brothers was everything. That's where my mother taught us that's how we learned to work together as a team. That's how we first learned to conflict resolution. I learned how to play jacks on the floor, on the kitchen floor while my mother cooked, And I remember even my mother saying after I was divorced, she said, look, whatever you do not bypass kitchen and dinner time with your girls.
Mm.
She said, because if you do, you're not going to know who they are. You're not going to know what's going on. There's not going to be the connection that you want to have with your babies. And so we hope to encourage families, that group, 25 to 45, get back in the kitchen, try these recipes. They're simple, they're basic, but here's a time where you can talk to your kids, talk to your hubby, talk to your wife, connect, because healthy families equal healthy communities.
Mm.
And
Absolutely.
so these target market, they're watching other, reality TV shows. They're watching, Housewives of New Jersey and Housewives of Atlanta. And I said, that Sheila cooking with Sheila, that's not going to grab their attention.
Mm-mm.
It's just not. I said, I need a name that's going to grab their attention. I said, so Gangsta Goodies Kitchen is grabbing their attention. And so that's the kind of twofold on the name.
Love it. And you know what? It grabbed my attention right away. I didn't even see much. It didn't take much. And I followed immediately because
Oh,
I was
thank
like,
you.
yep, she's speaking my language. And then, I
Mhm.
started watching some of your reels and the guests you were having on. And I was like, I totally see what she's doing here. This is like many amazing elements and strategy going on all at once.
All
And
at once.
about the name, I just met you officially in this call, and I'm like,
Yes.
I can't think of a good reason to change the name. I'm sure a Food Network or whomever might think, but at the same time, if they are using their brain, they would also notice what you noticed about what the popular shows are doing. And I will
Yes.
just take a quick moment just to talk about why KCBC, why I used all the synthwave colors, and I've got like,
Yes.
the honey badger with the giant gold chain advertising
Yes.
season 4, and I post my workouts and I use all kinds of weird funky music is because I did my market research and I noticed that like, no offense to the bigger podcast, but they're very
Yes.
polished. They're very much like
Yes.
2 colors on all their logos and all this stuff. And everybody worships kind of, and I do say that word meaningfully. Like if we're
Yes.
talking about famous people, 5 or 6 times a week, that's a level of like hero worship, right? And so like
Yes.
I
Yes.
know, you seem like you're probably a reader or a
Mm-hmm.
researcher, you're a learner. I am too. I
I
love
am.
all the big name books and speakers and TED talkers and all that, but
Yes.
I started this so that I could speak to the people in our community that were running the small businesses and the nonprofits and the people that I was going to get to do life with. I'm never going to get to
Yeah.
do life with, the next New York Times bestselling officer or offer uh, author.
Yes.
God
Yes.
willing, the circles, and I pray the same thing for you too, that the influence will
Yes.
grow. But we have to start with the people who are in our community. And
I hear.
my whole thing too was, and it sounds very similar to yours. I was having these conversations anyway. I was talking to people about this stuff anyway, and I was like, I should just start recording this. And I'm sure you know this too. When you have a conversation with somebody around a meal and you go, man, I wish that was recorded. Somebody should have recorded that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're kind
Yes.
of letting people into that world. And if you get
Mm-hmm.
85 views on your video, it's almost like 85 people were there or they got to be in on that. And hopefully if they pull one
Yes.
thing from that conversation, like you had the
This.
gentleman, I can't remember his name. He's a bass player. And then I think he started making charcuterie boards somehow.
Yes.
I was like,
Yes. Yes.
how, like, where else am I gonna
J.
find what was his name? I'm sorry.
James Ward.
James Ward. I'm like, where
James
else
Ward.
would Warden? I'm sorry.
Ward.
Okay, James
WARD.
Ward.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to James.
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Yes.
where am I gonna meet somebody like this? And then I love too how you cut or your editor cut in the
Huh?
footage of him playing live. It's
Yes.
just incredible. So
Yes.
there,
It is.
yeah,
And that's how he started making the cutting boards, is that he was making guitars.
that's right. Yeah,
And so from the scrap wood, he started making the boards. It's like, if that ain't creative and artistic and just using all your resources, just amazing. I was in awe.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, you're in your 9th year. This will be 9 years of
Mm-hmm.
Gangsta Goodies.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
let's kind of start with like, lessons you've learned. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We in a previous conversation and then when we were preparing for this, you're talking about, revenue, that whole piece, and like being in a sales and finance positions. But again, and we know this, like we're not all taught in elementary school or public school how to make a business or how to
Mm-hmm.
market, like when it's us, we're our
Yes.
personal brand. So I would love to hear some lessons and then we could talk about other stuff too.
Absolutely. Oh my God. I've learned a lot of lessons. And I'll tell you, Michael, that initially revenues didn't even come to my mind. With an MBA, you would think this girl has an MBA, that because I'm doing what I'm being led to do
Mm-hmm.
and I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. And I just didn't even think about it. Okay. Now, eventually, I'm like, now, wait a minute. I'm paying for this out of my pocket. How long am I going to be able to sustain that? So it was that. And then a mentor saying to me, Sheila, people want to taste your food. And I'm like, what? She said, it's a cooking show. What makes you think they wouldn't want talk about being in it and not being able to see those things that are, low-hanging fruit?
Absolutely.
And I was like, huh, she's right. Revenues, tasting my food. So I finally put those two together. And I would encourage any entrepreneur out there. It doesn't matter. And I think I didn't look at the revenue part because it wasn't a traditional model. Okay.
There's no blueprint for it.
There's no blueprint
Nope.
for this. Okay. So I didn't even look at, but explore what the revenues potentials can be. Don't do like I did, y'all, and wait till you're 3-4 years in before you start thinking about that. Okay. Because then you're trying to catch up. Okay. Now we can catch up, we can do that, but that's not ideal. Okay. Y'all shake your head with me. That is not ideal.
Yes, ma'am.
And so what that because what that put me in the position of is when I'm talking to people about how to grow strategically, and it's like, well, I don't even have any revenues to even start with. Okay. So that really put me behind the 8 ball. Okay. And so I had to start thinking and going, okay, Sheila, let's get some revenues going. So that is when we started. I do catering, small, 50 and under, and charcuterie. I absolutely, and even charcuterie was only because one of my oldest daughter's friends had me to make. She called me one day. She said, Miss Sheila, you know them boards you make with the fruit and the cheese and the meat and all that? She said, can you make one for me? I'm going to take to a friend's birthday party. I was like, sure, honey. And she's like, well, how much I owe you? And I was like, give me $50, And she comes pick it up. 2 days later, she calls me and she said, Miss Sheila, a lady at the birthday party wants one too. And I was
This
like,
is how it
huh.
happens. This is how it happens. This is how God does it.
Yeah. So then, and again, still, I'm not thinking business, Michael, at all. And I'm like, okay, tell her give me $50. And I'm just covering the ingredients. I'm doing this for fun because I like doing it. Then the lady that I made that one for called me and she said, 2 of my friends want one too. I was like, wait a minute. Hold up. So then I start researching charcuterie businesses.
Right.
What I need to do in the state of Missouri and the city of Kansas City to make it happen. And so my daughter's friend said, Miss Sheila, you should sell these. And I said, honey, the thought never even occurred to me. And it just so happened that right on that was the cusp. I look around and everybody's doing charcuterie. Now, my mother just called them meat and cheese boards, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I always called it. But charcuterie is a French word for cured meats. And and then we've taken them and we do all kinds of elaborate things with them. And so that is then where the charcuterie services and the catering services are the revenue streams that help fuel and fund Gangsta Goodies Kitchen. But I would have done that from the beginning. Okay. And there's still missed opportunity, Michael. And maybe that's something that you can kind of step me through. I've come up with an advertising plan.
Mm-hmm.
I've never sold advertising because that's how a show makes money, right? It's through advertising,
Right.
and sponsorship.
Yeah. So, well, hey, let's riff about that, right? Okay. Because I've got ideas. And in my journey to first off believe that I'm worth paying for my business consulting services, right? So like I started Vocati Ad Servidium or VAS when I got laid off, very traumatic moment for our family. And I knew a lot about process improvement and things like that. And starting my own LLC, yeah, School of Hard Knocks, it was pretty gangsta of me. And I do also, considering my background, and one day that story will be told, but I consider myself pretty gangsta with a lot of stuff in my life. Just the attitude and being scrappy. And still, I'm not like, I can speak intelligently, but there's a lot of parts of me that are still just very much like, feral. You know what I mean?
Yes, and absolutely. I know what you mean.
Yeah, and it's you know how some people they'll get it twisted and they'll think like maybe you're too nice or whatever, and you just go, trust me, there's another side. All that to say, first to believe that, what I do is worth money, doing the research, right? And then I started thinking about it. And, Kansas City Business Cats, actually, we just got our first official sponsor who, has decided to sponsor this season. And we're going to see what happens for this person and their business. And they're offering a special for the listeners. And, it's a great thing. But like with you, let's talk about your business, right? So I think about all the things that are on the table in your counter, and I go, who made that big wok right there? Who who's the one who made the grinder that you used, or maybe Dan and Sharon brought on to the show
Yes.
when they're talking about
Yes.
Black Drip? And I go, are there local producers of these things? Who provided the produce? Like, you know what I'm saying? And
Yes.
and you're
Yes.
nodding emphatically, and I just go, how do we get those folks to throw in? And based on your nods, I want to hear your feedback on that. Or is that something that you're doing?
No, it's not anything that I'm doing, but
Okay.
it's all the things that I have, of course, up here and have written
Yes.
down. But not but because but then negates all that. But however, having the bandwidth to develop that
Mm,
and then go sell it.
yeah. Right.
That's the you know, and y- and so I have not made any of those types of approaches at all.
Well,
And so it is, and again, that's low hanging fruit for me, And so again, it's just being able to develop it and then put a plan together and go after it.
well, let's talk about this then too, because my observation with your following on Instagram and on YouTube, and I know, like, this is not a secret. Anybody can go look this up.
Hmm.
But when you pass
Yes,
1,000 subscribers on YouTube, you are
yes,
eligible for monetization. Let me just ask you
yes,
transparently: do you
yes.
get ads or ad revenue or anything from YouTube for views or
N-
anything like that, or are you eligible?
No, because the other
Okay.
component to that eligibility is 10,000 viewing hours.
That's right. That's right. That's where yeah. And I've looked at my
That's where they get us.
Spotify. My I had some paid subscribers, and Spotify
Hmm.
eliminated that program. I'm not going to curse their name too much because I still think
Yes,
it's a great steal. I still can't believe all this technology is like mostly free for us, like YouTube. I think the day will come when
exactly.
they pay us to be on it. But when I think about you, I go, how many eyeballs are seeing your stuff, and how much is that
Yes,
worth? When you get
yes.
into the engagement, and I've interviewed marketing professionals and gurus on the show. Actually, one of them helped me get an idea for like a one sheet that I could make. And I was just grateful that our first sponsor, really took my figures through, like, a lot of text exchanges. And I basically broke it down and I said, here's how many followers I have on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Here's how many
Yes,
followers or subscribers I have on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. The
yes,
guests. So you and I were going to be collaborators on Instagram for a couple, 2 or 3 reels. I estimated
yes.
the reach there, right? Because when we collaborate, our exposure goes 2, 3, 4 times. If we do the tags correctly, if I repost what you post about me within the first 5 minutes, the algorithm does stuff. But when we start to get into that, and if you look at your Instagram and you look at your impressions, I'll be transparent
Mhm.
right now. My
Okay.
Instagram business, and this is, I don't think it's anything to brag about considering some of the other folks, and people I've had on the show, but I want to put this into perspective for everybody.
Mhm. Right.
My Instagram, I got like 434 followers. I have
Mhm.
had 10.7 thousand views in the last 30 days. So since December
Okay.
13th, there have been 10,687 sets of eyeballs that have looked at my stuff.
Mhm.
64% of them are non followers. I'm getting more
Mhm.
views from people who don't even know who the heck I am. I must be
Mhm.
doing something
Mhm.
a little bit right there, and
Absolutely.
celebrating
Absolutely.
that too. And that's the other thing too I wanted to say, is
Yes.
that we have to celebrate who is on board, and we can't think,
Yes.
dang, I don't have 10,000 followers yet, I don't have 20,000 followers yet.
Yes.
Epitome, he was just on your show, he was also on I-70. I
Mhm.
love what he told John Little. He said something about, if 80 people saw your video, 80 people watched the video, keep it up, stay consistent.
Yes.
You've also mentioned being consistent as well through it all.
Yes.
But to kind of get back to the original point about things that we could all be doing for each other too, especially that's where I think in Kansas City, it's like, you know, if more people thought about it, the fact that, for example, Sheila is running Gangsta Goodies Kitchen, your outreach, your PR, your scheduling, you're planning the meals, you're doing all this stuff. We all need to be recognizing that. We should, and I
Mhm.
know not everybody's going to do this, because I also have to take into account that some people just don't see it, or some people's personality type. There's plenty of things I see that I don't take my thumb and move it half an inch to like as well, but we need to be doing more of that for
Yes.
each other,
Each other. Yes. Absolutely.
you
Yes.
know?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
And that's
Because it
the thing, is
matters.
I want to celebrate the heroes in my hood, right? I
Mhm.
want to
Mhm.
celebrate the people in my
Absolutely.
city. And
Yes.
I kind of lost my point there, but just on the subject of things to do, it's like somebody out there is somebody who listens or watches everything you and I do.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
what, you know this from your sales background, what's in it for them? And I think about that,
Yes.
and I've thought about, if I did a Patreon, or what could I do for my listeners that would give them that
Yes.
extra? And then for you, it's like, what steps do you have to take, or have you taken, to try to find a local network or a network? I don't even know what that world looks like. Like, how do you sell a show? What?
Ex-
So
exactly.
yeah,
That is, it's funny you mentioned that because I met with a lady this week, actually.
awesome.
And she said, Sheila, by the end of the year, we should be pitching your show to PBS. There's no reason why you shouldn't be on PBS locally. And I'm like,
I agree with that.
how do we do that? Well, she said, well, that's what I'm going to be able to help you do. Figure out there are things that we'll have to clean up in the show, and all of that. She said, but I can help you figure all of that out. And I'm like, okay, yeah, put me on PBS, because this is a Kansas City, because I've had people say, well, you don't interview people anywhere else. And I'm like, yeah, no, one day I will, when it's a national brand. But right now I'm focusing on my community, because like you said, these are the people that I can actually touch.
That's right.
These are the people that the work that they do actually impacts me, you know?
Absolutely.
And that's so important. We got to take care of home first, right?
Absolutely.
So that's, and I'm like, yeah, look. And then, because she said, locally, if you get on PBS locally, then, and it's a great outcome, then they'll put you nationwide. They'll put you in other markets. And I'm like, okay. Because that is one of the goals, is that Gangsta Goodies Kitchen become a household name all across the globe. So
Love that.
we're working on it.
I can see it. I can see it.
I
And
can too.
gosh, who knows who's going to listen to this a month or 2 months, or somebody finds this a year from now. But local KC grocery stores and farmers
Yes.
markets and local manufacturers of cooking ware,
Yes.
please
Yes.
reach out to Sheila.
Yes. Yes. And I have done a
Yes.
few, like, for example, Restless Distillery. I love Benet Shannon, Restless Distillery. A couple of years ago, she and I actually did a holiday cocktail episode together, because I
Okay.
do a holiday cocktail every
I've
year.
noticed that. Yeah, you do. You get the Christmas
Hmm.
tree out, and yeah,
Yes.
so cool.
And so, but when I did a charcuterie workshop and whiskey tasting, she gave the whiskey,
Yeah,
And so, but like you said, we have to know what the benefit is back to them,
mm,
And I'm just like, look, Benet, there's going to be 30 women at this charcuterie workshop who half have never even had whiskey. And then the other half who have, they've never heard of Restless. And so then the probability of them then becoming customers is pretty great, because we're going to have the Whiskey Bay, Kansas City come, and she's going to lead that whiskey tasting. Not me, but her. And so then, because she has all of the background and the knowledge on how to facilitate that.
absolutely.
And she's like, oh my God, yes. Yeah. So we had a great time doing that. So I've done just a little bit, not much at all, working, reaching out to others. But it's just that the time, having the bandwidth,
Absolutely.
to reach out and to make it make sense,
Yep.
to understand, what those numbers mean, and that has also been a challenge for me when it comes to looking at someone who could come in, paying someone to come in and manage my social media. And what I often find myself saying is that, look, I can post myself. That ain't what I'm looking for.
Right.
I need somebody that can look at these numbers understand what the analytics are saying, and then that drives the content. That's what I'm looking for.
Yep.
Michael, I just have not been able to find that,
Right.
and so I'm like, yeah, I'll keep posting myself, because if you can't help me understand that, then because that's why I would need you.
Right.
Again, I've got the pictures, I've got the clips, I have the content. I need somebody that can understand what them numbers are saying so we can
Absolutely.
make some data-driven decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is honestly, that is the rub, right? When you
It
are
is.
growing something and then you realize this is getting too big. And
Yes.
I know my strengths. And like you started off just right away, like I want to show up and I need to be cooking. I need to be doing, the outreach, prep, all that. And we know that we've got to have like tight processes and time. It's like anybody listening right now, too, they can tell that, when you're managing a lot of that stuff and you talk about bandwidth, it's like you're already going over
Stretched.
capacity. Yes, thank you. You're already
Stretched.
stretching. You're already
Mm-hmm.
operating at
Mm-hmm.
superhuman level. And
Mm-hmm.
health-wise, it's like, yeah, you got to get your sleep. You got family. You need to be available, like for in
Yes.
the property management, having the space for people to show up and just be present for them. And
Yes.
this is the rub. So let's talk about that too, about like your strategy and your processes. What are some things that you stopped doing in Gangsta Goodies because maybe like it just wasn't working or wasn't serving, or processes that were clunky? And then what are you working on now, and what are your kind of efficiency gains? Because I mean, yeah, that's your background, right? Like learning how to do things more
Yes.
efficiently. What's worked for you in
Yes.
the show?
Yes. So, it used to be, and I still do some of this to a degree, but it used to be, in order to find a guest, I'm on social media and I'm just kind of looking to see who's doing great things and
Right.
awesome things. And I still do that. But one of the great things that we put into place is that we put a banner on the website that says, "Want to be a guest on the show? Click here.
That's linked
Click
in the
here,
show
fill
notes,
out
by the
the
way,
form."
everybody. So just
Yes.
speaking to you, click that link I'm putting in there.
Yes, and click this link and then fill out the form, and then of course it comes to me, and then I can take it from there. And so it cuts out hours
Absolutely.
hours of other, just me circling around, and cuz it's just my two eyes. So I can't see everybody. I don't, it's impossible, which is one of the reasons why I do network as much as I do, because I want to know what everybody is doing.
Right.
But that one thing made a huge difference. The other thing that made a big difference was I would craft a different questions for each guest. Not so much anymore. Here is, I send everybody now like a guest info sheet. Give me all your information, all at one point, one place, and your any promo clips, your logos, all of that. Here it is. And then here are the questions, and then they answer the questions, and so it is typically. What I also find is that there's always something that's more directed that I'm going to ask towards that specific guest. But for the most part, I can keep those same set of questions. And that makes it run a lot smoother than, oh my God, where's the questions? The questions are the same and I got to memorize.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that having that process in place, and the preparation for the food, what are we going to cook? I do always ask the guests, are there any allergies or food dietary concerns that I should be aware of?
Right.
If not, if they don't have a favorite dish that they want me to make or something that they want to learn how to make, then I just kind of look at, what are families eating? What time of the year is it? This is back to school. Let me find a simple, basic dish that parents can have on the table in 30 minutes. It's back to school time. They're running here and there with the kids, so let's make it quick and easy.
Right.
And so that now I am looking for a way to kind of streamline what that recipe is without me having to be so engaged. I have tried with the audience, hey, what do y'all want to see me make?
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe it's just a matter of me putting that out there more often.
Sure.
Okay. And getting, and that's a way to engage with them as well, and be like, hey, I'm making this dish because so and so wanted me to make it. So here it is. And so I'm still looking for a way to kind of streamline that process. But, I get everything ready the night before,
Yeah.
and put the onions in a Ziploc bag, the potatoes, everything's cut, clean, washed, seasoned, everything's ready to go. So when the guest gets here, we just set it up and it's time to get cooking.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did notice that too. I wonder, well, I didn't wonder. After I watched like my fifth episode of Gangsta Goodies Kitchen, I was like, okay, yeah, they're chopping this stuff up in advance. Some of it, right? And then some of it you
Yes, yes,
deliberately you show like, hey, we're gonna this is
yes,
how we prepare it. And
yes,
and then you'll do the cuts where you say, all right, we're gonna let it simmer for, 10 minutes or whatever it is.
yes,
And so
yes,
it's really cool because the episodes are totally digestible. Using a funny word there because it's about food, but
yes,
hey, 15 minutes, 18 minutes,
yes,
and
yes,
and that's another thing that is so cool is because you get right into it, and then you have that moment where you talk with them about the content that they're the specialist in and how'd you do it. It's so natural too because you're just like I think you ask everybody too. So where are you from? you know
yes,
and if they're from Kansas City, you know exactly where the school is, and
yes,
and then oh, I went there too. And
yes,
it's
yes,
it's just that's the other thing about interviewing the local people is I imagine it takes a lot of that sort of social anxiety off too. Is like, okay,
yes,
this is somebody. And then I had you fill out some information before coming on the show too, because it's like
yes,
that's our way as hosts of
yes,
making sure that when the guests are on, they get to talk about what they're wanting to talk. There's that servant leadership aspect
yes,
there, to
yes,
where
yes.
this is about me. This is my show, but it's not about me when they're here.
Exactly. It's about the guest. Absolutely. And what the guest is doing to, and I always say that, our guests are range from political candidates to soccer moms, but whatever the work that they're doing it to make Kansas City a better place for all of us.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you also mentioned something about building a team and how to do that. What are some of your factors, or how do you approach bringing people onto a team in whatever you do? Like even with like charcuterie by Sheila,
Mhm.
and coordinating these events, like, and then your team with Gangsta Goodies. How do you select people, and how do you keep people engaged with what you're doing?
Michael, I really am the team for Gangster Goodies, and so when it comes to the nuts and bolts, I have an editor. Shout out to Michael Drone, who is an amazing young man who I know sometimes he's probably like, is Miss Sheila? Because I'm pretty picky too. I mean, this is my baby, right? So I'm like, yeah, honey, and so let's do it a little different. Now, mind you, I don't know nothing about editing, right?
Right. But you know what looks on brand and what's yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So when even with him, it was the referrals. It was his the things that people said about him and how I saw people engage with him. And it gave me the impression that there was a lot of alignment. Our work ethic, the product that we put out, and our overall feeling about people, and working with people, were aligned. And so that was very important to me because, Michael, I had one time a team. And now, when I tell you there were the technical side of this team, I absolutely loved them. Absolutely loved them. However, we had to part ways because there were other things, and I'll just give an example of, let's say a taping started at 10. Now I'm ready on my end. I'm ready to go at 9:30. The guest arrives at 9:55. They get here at 10:20.
Mm,
And this wasn't the first time.
yeah.
No communication. And I'm like, yeah, no, no.
Not okay.
Because see, that's not okay. People are giving their time to me. People are sharing their time with me. And no, we can't do that, And so I started back taping everything myself, because and I think for them it was, well, it's just a YouTube show. Well, yeah, it's a YouTube show, but it's my name on it. And consistency to me is important. And it's the non negotiable bottom line.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, that's not going to work for me, partner. So I'll see y'all. But when I tell you their output, loved every bit of it,
Right.
but that other side of it, we weren't aligned and I just had to let it loose,
Absolutely.
and yeah, and it's, so it is finding people who, believe in the mission, believe in the vision, and who are willing to treat it as such,
Absolutely.
that's very important to me. And it is, and so that is really how I kind of look at who I'm going to engage with, because it's important. They can be the best at the technical side, but if those other things don't align, it's not going to work. And it's not worth the stressors and all of that. It's just not.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really tough with people that are really good at things and their confidence really rests in how good they are. And
Yes.
you got people at different development stages in their life too. And I will never throw any younger generation under the bus. I'm not one of those people. I see the value
Right.
in the
Absolutely.
strengths and the challenges that every generation has to go through, but
Yes.
you having this Gangsta Goodies, it's 9 years old, but it's been your whole life in the making.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
the whole thing about these current times we're in is, I mean, with obviously some exceptions, I can't say this is a sweeping statement, but there's kind of no such thing as just a YouTube show anymore.
Right. Right.
And anybody who cannot at least see that component to say,
Mm-hmm.
we have this amazing host talking about
Mm-hmm.
great things with local people, and they can't at least see the potential in that, then yeah, it's like they don't belong in the same room.
Mm-mm.
And
It's time to go.
you talk about too, like the impressions as well. Like this is a thing a lot of people, need to really not concern themselves, but some folks really need to do a fearless inventory of the tribe of folks that they're
Mm-hmm.
partnering with or that they
Yes.
decide. And you have to have discernment. You really do.
Yes.
You really do. And
Ooh. Yes.
it, you know,
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know why it is so difficult, except for the fact that, the things that are really important to us as content creators, you
Mm-hmm.
know, people either get it or they don't.
It
There's no
that part.
lukewarm. You can't have any lukewarm anything in the
Mm-mm.
circle,
Mm-mm.
you know?
No, not at all. Not at all. It is. And Michael, because the show is in my home.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so when you talk about discernment, that's an even bigger,
Big time.
becomes even more important. Yes. And so, because I've had many people, oh, you should have this person on the show or this person on the show. And, and I'll social media stalk people to see. And then I'm like,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, no.
Yeah, I know people who do shows and businesses out of their home, and they've confided in me the same thing. And if we go
Hmm.
back to live interviews like we did in the first part of KCBC, I'm gonna have a
Yes.
studio again because again, it's like
Yes.
this is where I eat, sleep, play with my family,
Yes.
and
Yes.
yeah, building that trust with people, that's the thing. That's the rub for sure.
It is. It is. It really, really is. And I don't, and I also, I operate in faith, not fear.
Mm,
And
thank you
so,
for that.
because my family has said, oh my God, do you know this person? No, I don't. However, I have faith and believe that if this was somebody that was not supposed to be in my home, they wouldn't be here.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That's huge in what we do.
Hmm.
And on that subject too, like we talked about production, we talked about processes, consistency, networking. Which groups or who is your board of directors or people in your tribe that you've mentioned a couple times here? You had a mentor. You've got
Hmm.
people. You are obviously a very motivated, disciplined, person. Who do you go to get advice and wisdom, and how do you find ways to develop your own skills and improve what you want to in your life?
Right. So at developing my own skill, I'm always taking some sort of class, some sort
Right.
of online course or it could be even in person, how to become a better entrepreneur. Because, having an MBA does not mean that I know how to effectively run a business, two different things, And so I do a lot of that, a lot of workshops. I am right now taking a online class, a food photography class, you
That's
know
awesome.
and so yes, and so how to take better pictures and angles and lighting and all of those sorts of things. And so I use those as well, but I also have a couple of people that I'm pretty close to. That one is my BFF. We've been friends since we were in the seventh grade,
Nice.
and because she knows me better than anybody that's on this planet right now. Since my mom is no longer here, she is the person who knows me the best. And so, and I trust that she is always going to be very upfront with me, and she's not going to sugarcoat it. Look, Sheila, okay, this is okay. And so I will, and we're in two totally different industries, but her insight is very valuable to me. And then I have another, the mentor that, I mentioned, who, and actually, I worked for his family business years ago. That's where I was the director of finance at.
Nice.
And he just happens to be a foodie. We would spend so much time talking about food and all kinds of stuff. And so a lot of things I bounce off of him. So, like, for example, I have a friend who he and I were on the Food Network together on that tailgate food takedown.
Nice.
Yes. So he and I represent. He's a local barbecue guy, Mike P. Shout out Mike P. Um, he we and then so it was he and I, and then they flew in a team from LA to represent the Raiders. So he and I represented the Chiefs. This team represented the Raiders,
I need to look
and
this
they
up.
built it.
I'm feeling
It was it was really cool.
that's
And
awesome.
so we had, but he's so, and I mentioned that because he is the spice rubs uh barbecue sauce guru. And so, in looking at ways, revenues, okay? And so, my mentor is going to lead us in a conversation about white labeling.
Okay.
Mike, you already have the spices. I have ideas for 4 spices. You've already made them, they've already gone through the FDA and all that. Let's put my label on them and let's sell them. You make some money, I make some money.
It's amazing.
And so this mentor is, leading that because he has a whole food consulting, business. And so he's going to lead us in that. What does that collaboration look like? What is that white labeling contract? What does that look like? So be on the lookout for it. We have one called Gangsta Paradise. So Gangsta Paradise is for African food, Caribbean food, just ethnic food. Then we have Gangsta Lean, that's salt free and sugar free. Then we have Gangsta Grill. That's going to be a traditional Kansas City barbecue rub. And then there is Soul Gangsta. And so that is for soul food.
It's
And so
amazing.
it's, again, he's already done the work, and let's collaborate on this and let's make it happen. And so that is the thing that I'm working on right now.
That is
Yeah.
so awesome and encouraging. And I'm going to be looking out for the day that drops because we're
Yes.
going to have to get some in
Yes.
our
Yes.
kitchen. Um,
Yes.
My gosh, this conversation has been so awesome. Two things kind of come to mind, and then I want to give you an opportunity, anything that we missed or anything that comes up.
Okay.
But you had mentioned that at some point, cooking is like therapy, and
Yes.
so I wanted to hear about that. And then you also mentioned that you got a lymphoma diagnosis, I think,
Yes.
13 years ago,
Yes.
and I would love to
Yes.
hear about how that journey has been. But yeah, cooking is therapy, and
Yes.
the lymphoma and
Absolutely.
what that's been like. Yeah,
Yes. Yes. So, for me, and we all kind of manage stress and anxiety in many different ways.
absolutely.
For me, it's getting in the kitchen. And so it is taking my mind off of whatever that thing is, and putting these raw ingredients together. And oftentimes when I do that, I also play music that my mother loved. And I welcome her spirit into the kitchen with me, and I just, I'm talking to her, I'm talking to God, and I'm like, look, y'all know me better, okay? And so it has a way of just calming my spirit,
Mm,
and then I have a dish that now I can share with my family and my friends. And that's one of the things that brings me great joy, is being able to share delicious food with people that I love. And so it is, yeah, it is just my, again, when something's troubling me, I'm like, I'm going to get some ingredients together and I'm going to try recipes and something new, something different, and to help kind of manage that and soothe that. Yes.
absolutely.
And because and leading into the whole diagnosis, being diagnosed with a rare type of blood cancer, you know, one that the scientists say there is no cure. And so, I'm like, okay, God, what we doing here? you know, we, well, what are we really doing here? It's called cutaneous T cell lymphoma. Cutaneous meaning skin, and T cells. So our T cells, as you know, are our immune system cells.
Right.
And so I have two of my T cells that are directly related to my skin have mutated.
Okay.
Okay. And so my skin broke out in a rash. Who would ever think that a rash would end up being something as serious as a blood cancer? And so, but here's how God works, Michael, because it's so rare. Less than 3% of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma patients have this type. The difference between Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's just means something happened to my DNA after birth.
Okay.
It wasn't passed down, just something happened to cause this mutation. Okay.
Right.
Less than 3% of lymphoma patients have this. And I think the number now is up to there's maybe 20,000 of us. It's not very many of us. But there's a specialty team right here at KU.
KU Health System. I used to work there. I love those folks.
Did
I
you?
love those folks in the
Wow.
cancer center. I'm sorry.
Me too.
Very, very close to
Me
home.
too.
I recruited a lot
Yeah.
of oncology nurses for that team.
Wow. Yes. So my oncology derm, he's not there anymore. He's gone on to University of San Francisco.
Okay.
But Dr. Abianca, Dr. McGurk,
McGurk.
all of those that were,
I
yep.
was I was in lean workshops with Dr. McGurk. I very familiar
Yes.
with Dr.
Yes.
McGurk. Wow, it is
I
a
love
small world.
it is and realizing how blessed I am. Most patients have to drive 3 and 4 hours or get on a
Yeah.
plane to get to a specialty clinic. I live downtown in the Jazz District. Okay. I'm 10 minutes away from KU.
Yeah. What a trip.
I said, look at God. And, once it is, and thankfully it was caught early. And so, because it was caught early, then the therapies and the outcomes are different. So,
Right.
what the scientists say is that most of us with this We'll die with it, not necessarily from it.
Okay.
Okay. That does not negate the seriousness of it, though, because if it's caught late, and oftentimes in African Americans, it is caught late and it's more aggressive.
Mm.
And so then that opens up a whole nother path. And so, again, thankfully, mine was caught early. And so I get a treatment called photophoresis. Photophoresis was the very first immunotherapy treatment that the FDA approved back in like 1982 for blood cancers. So I have a port right here,
Okay.
and they take out through this port, they take out a cup of my blood. They separate the red blood cells from the white blood cells. The white blood cells is where our T cells are, right?
Okay.
And so they treat the white blood cells, the T cells, because that's where the mutation is happening, with a medicine called Uvidex. And then they expose the white blood cells through this machine to UVA and UVB rays. They basically give my white blood cells a suntan, infuse it, both the white and the red, back into my body. I get up and go to work like nobody's business. It is amazing. And I have an opportunity of being a patient ambassador for the pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
I was like, look at God, just all the way around. And so they send me around the country sharing my story.
That is incredible.
Yeah, I'm very grateful.
My gosh. I I knew this was going to be an epic talk. I knew this is going to go down in our little hall of fame with KCBC. I so appreciate you sharing your story, your perspective, talking about the challenges of being real, because that's one of those things too. I mean, we have people on the show, and I noticed too. I watch other folks on other shows, and it's not necessarily appealing or sexy to talk about the struggles that we've had in creating these things, but it is so important to be honest and vulnerable in that
Yes.
space so people know. And
Yes.
I just feel like it opens up a whole new dimension as well for the conversation about those of us that are working to build something that God gave us the vision for. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
it's
Yes.
it's needed, and it's just so amazing what you're doing. Is there anything that we forgot, or that you just feel like is a good note to kind of sign off on?
I just, and we live, we learn, right? And so I just try to encourage people that I come in contact with that, and just remind them that we came into this human experience to have the Creator sent us to have a joyous occasion. Do what makes you feel good. Do what makes your soul sing. Because at the end of the day, and when this physical experience is over, then what we leave behind, the impact that we've had on other human beings. Because if we're not happy within ourselves, if we're not doing what makes our soul happy, we're not going to be able to impact God's people. And so make self happy, do those things, align ourselves, it's so important. And it doesn't mean that it's a bed of roses. That's not what that means. It just means that you have faith in knowing. I remember one of the things that one of my doctors asked me one time was, Sheila, what did you do to wrap your mind around this diagnosis? And I said, well, one of the things I did was I developed 2 sayings that I say almost every day, even 13 years later. It is, I am healthy, I am fit, I am the center of abundance, and I'm the perfect size 8. I'm not the perfect size 8, but that's the humor kind of side too. But is that to see ourselves as we want to be. I'm healthy. And I say to myself, I'm healthy. And today I choose faith over fear, because having this kind of diagnosis, the fear of it can shut you down.
Absolutely.
I can't live in fear. I can't live in fear. I can't operate in fear, because the mind is like, oh my God, am I going to die today? Am I going to die tomorrow? No. And so I had a therapist say to me one time, because in the beginning I did struggle with that. And she says, well, Sheila, how old do you want to be before you die? Or how do you want to be when you die? And I said, well, I want to live to be a 90-year-old spunky one. She said, well, that's what it's going to be then. And Michael, I don't know what it was about her reaffirming that. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I am going to live to be a 90-year-old spunky one. And that is when I began to not be afraid of the diagnosis and just begin to, I'm like, you know what? God, I don't know what's in store, but I'm going to use this to spread the word, to enlighten, to however I'm supposed to use it. I'm going to use it that way. And I share it, and I share it often because, and I share it often in my own community in African Americans, because we often, again, a rash, who would have thought? And I'm sure, Michael, the only reason I even went to the doctor because of the rash is because my mother was an LP, and she's like, look, anything going on with your body,
Yeah.
don't hesitate, go. Our skin is our biggest organ.
Yep.
And it's the only organ that's exposed to all the elements. And we never think about that. And the protection that it requires and that it needs, you know?
Absolutely.
Where I didn't use a sunscreen before then. Because, you know,
Yep.
I bought into that myth that my melanin is going to protect me.
Right.
No. You know, it does to a degree, but skin is skin. And we got to protect it, you know? And so I would just say to, you know, your listeners and, you know, anybody listening, just, you know, do what feels good. You know, there's so many things going on in our world today. And a lot of those things we don't control. We have no control over, but we do control how we treat our neighbor. We have control over that, how we treat ourselves, how we treat our families, and healthy families equal healthy communities. So that's really all.
Love that so much. Sheila, thank you again so much for coming on the show. Can you just tell our listeners, we are going to post all the links in the show notes,
Sure.
but what are the best ways for them to support you and everything that you're doing?
Sure. Michael, thank you for inviting me. It is always an honor to share my story. It really is, you know, and so I get excited every time. And so one more thing I wanted to say
go for
is
it.
that, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, is that you never know who's watching and who's listening and that sort of thing. In November, I had an opportunity to go to the World Food Championships. The World Food Championships is the biggest food competition in the world. Okay. And so back in August, I got an email. It said, hey, we would like to invite you to the World Food Championships to do charcuterie demonstrations on the stage.
Jeez.
So, and I share that again to say, we don't know, you know, but when we are giving it our all, and like you said, when we are operating in our purpose, those doors are going to open. They just are. They are for you, Michael. They are for me. They are for your wife. They're going to open, you know? And so, and I just want, and it was an amazing experience. I'm like, oh my God.
That's incredible.
It really, it was an incredible experience. And so I had an opportunity to do that. And not just that, but then I had an opportunity to make individual charcuterie for what they call the master table. And so the master table were for all of their supporters, their sponsors. And so every day we had like sets, okay? And so they had, during their cocktail hour, they had a charcuterie board made by this girl from Kansas City. Who would ever thunk it?
It's amazing.
And so, and that's what I say, go after your dreams, whatever, no matter. And I think I heard somebody say, if your dreams don't scare you, then maybe you're not dreaming big enough.
Yeah.
And then,
absolutely.
And so one of my favorite quotes is, dream a big dream, make it a memory of the future, and expect a miracle. And that's what I'm doing every single day. Y'all can follow us on Instagram, Gangsta Goodies Kitchen, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, and TikTok, y'all. I'm trying to learn TikTok.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't, they don't pull it in
Yeah.
7 days, 6 days, I think.
Yeah, I've been hearing that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just talking to Phil McDowell from Armor Marketing, I think Thursday night, and then we got
Okay.
off. He literally said TikTok's going nowhere, and we got off our interview, and I look at my phone and I see ByteDance is going to pull TikTok on the 19th unless the Supreme Court, and I'm like, dude, we were. They announced
And
the
just
news.
yes.
Who knows what'll happen with it? But Sheila, such an honor to have you on the show. We will definitely do this again in the future. We'd love to, do an
Yes.
update, learn about how all the and the spices, when you drop that, you launch it, how that goes. Kansas City is a better place because you're in it. I'm just so glad to know you and have you on this show.
Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. You heard from Sheila herself how to go support Gangsta Goodies Kitchen. Definitely follow. And, while you're at it, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like some videos. That helps us content creators tremendously when we do that. For more information, definitely check the show notes and stay tuned for the next episode. We appreciate you.